Tibet is a physical area and also a people. They have evolved together for thousands of years. Both have been influenced by countless exchanges with neighboring areas over time. This interplay between the natural world and people, internal ideas and landforms, and external influences has created amongst the Tibetan people a unique worldview or set of ethics in relation to their environment. This discussion attempts to provide glimpses into some of these viewpoints and values. Tibetans have many layers to their understanding of their relation to the natural world. Some of these ideas must spawn from the extremely dramatic environment that Tibetans traditionally inhabited on the roof of the world, amidst the world's tallest mountains. They have also been heavily influenced by the world of Buddhism. They have a rich tradition that stems from the original Buddhism, through Mahayana, to the Vajrayana tradition that exists today in Tibet. In addition to these elements, the environmental worldviews of the Tibetans are also heavily influenced by the main traditional occupations in Tibetan society, the monastic, agricultural, and nomadic occupations. Like many other indigenous cultures that have lived in the same area for millennia, the Tibetan environmental ethic has valuable lessons about sustainability and living in harmony with nature. Tibet has a very unique, challenging, yet ultimately beautiful and inspiring landscape. This is the majestic backdrop of the Tibetan people and religion. Tibet is often referred to as the roof of the world because it is on the highest and largest plateau in the world. Forming as the Indian and the Eurasian tectonic plates collide, the area is pushed up to an elevation of over 4,000 meters. The plateau slopes downward from the west to the southwest, and mountains create most of the border. The world's highest mountains, the Himalayas, are mostly within Tibet. These behemoths reach into the sky at over 8,000 meters and are continuing to rise. Due to this altitude, Tibet is a generally cold area, even though it sits at a relatively low latitude. This unique position creates daily variance in temperature that may go from well below freezing at night to being summery warm at midday. The Himalayas drain the moisture of the monsoon storms that come from India as they pass over the mountains. This leaves all of Tibet with very little precipitation, on average less than 30 centimeters a year. Much of this precipitation comes in the form of damaging hailstorms. Despite the little precipitation, Tibet still has countless alpine glaciers that feed the origin of many of Asia's most important rivers. These include the Mekong, the Yangtze, the Yellow River, the Indus River, and the Brahmaputra, which, in Tibet, carves the deepest canyon in the world. In fact, the rivers that originate in Tibet provide vital water to 83% of Asia's population, or roughly 47% of the people of the entire world. There are also numerous lakes in Tibet, many of which are remnants of the ancient sea that used to cover the plateau. They are therefore generally salty or alkaline. Many of them are hot due to the seismic activity in the area. The huge Tibetan plateau is about 2.5 million square kilometers, or roughly the size of all of Western Europe. Much of this area is relatively barren and certainly inhospitable, yet Tibetans live there amidst a wide variety of plants and animals. Many of the deep valleys are rich and green, and there are millions of acres of forest, many once unexploited by humans. There are over 100,000 plant species, many of them rare or endemic. There are also over 500 bird species, and many unique wild animals. Some of these unique species include the snow leopard, the Himalayan brown bear, the wild yak, the black-necked crane, the red panda, and the giant panda. Within this environment is the political geography of Tibet. Around 6 million Tibetans made their home in this area before the Communist Chinese invaded in 1951. Before that, Tibet had been divided up into 3 main regions. Amdo, in the northeast, is comprised of rich plains and forest. It is now divided up into the present-day Chinese provinces of Sichuan, Gansu, and Qinghai. Kham is in the east and is made up of many rows of mountains and valleys. It has more precipitation and therefore many forests and good farming lands. It is now within the Chinese provinces of Qinghai, Sichuan, and Yunnan. Most of the major rivers start here. Finally, Wu and Zhang are the most mountainous and are a vast and generally dry area that make up western and central Tibet. This is the area that comprises the present-day Tibetan Autonomous Region. This is the only area that China recognizes as Tibet, and thus is what many people in the rest of the world consider Tibet as well. The sacred city and capital of Lhasa is also within Wu and Zhang. There are several layers to the environmental ethic of Tibetan Buddhism, because Tibetan Buddhism is a culmination of centuries of Buddhist and other religious thought. Tibetan Buddhism shares views that all Buddhists have, some of those of the Central and East Asian Mahayana Buddhism, and their own Vajrayana form of Buddhism. This section deals with possible questions or conflicts that may arise in the Buddhist philosophy. Questions like, if the most noble and highest goal of all Buddhists is to achieve awakening or enlightenment, then why should we care about this world? Why should we even consider other things like the environment on our path to enlightenment? There are, in fact, many environmental ethics or worldviews that come from Buddhist teachings. The ideas of dharma, reincarnation, karma, and no self all have bearing on the way that humans should relate or strive to relate to nature. Also, there are explicit guidelines that were laid out by Buddha himself. Dharma is a complicated and multifaceted term in Buddhism and other Eastern religions. It can be described in many ways, as religion, as religious teachings, as morality, or as the sacred law of the universe. The relevant factor of Dharma to this discussion is that Dharma exists and can be found in all things in nature. As a world of microorganisms exists in a single drop of water, or as we can see how a mother dog cares for her pups with compassion. Thus we can gain awareness and understanding by observing the world around us, and we need to take care to preserve and protect this world. Reincarnation is another fundamental belief of Buddhism. This concept of every animal around us having countless past lives, and of our own potential to possibly find ourselves in the body of another animal, like a horse, a vulture, or a flea, leads one to an inescapable empathy for the well-being of other species. Our ancestors may well be around us now. An annoying fly may well be a deceased grandmother. Buddha himself was at times an animal on his path to enlightenment. There are stories of Buddha in his animal forms, for example, as a monkey. One story of him as a monkey king shows how he was so compassionate that he sacrificed his own life so that others in his clan could live. Thus, if even the most revered being ever, the Buddha, was an animal with lessons to teach, then surely we must respect and care for animals. The human realm in the Buddhist universe is just one of 6 realms of being. It is above the level of animals, and one gets out of being an animal by performing good deeds or getting karma. Yet while we are as humans in a special position with a greater possibility to attain enlightenment, that does not make us any better